The shuttle vibrated with a low hum as we cut through Titan's atmosphere, but it wasn't just the engines that rattled my nerves. It was the memories of what lay beneath the moon's surface, the twisted city we had discovered. My heart raced as I stared out at the hazy orange landscape below, knowing that we had barely escaped the darkness. "How close are we?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady despite the fear clawing at my insides. "Just a few minutes out," Lee replied, his eyes glued to the control panel. I could see the tension etched into his features, the way his jaw tightened with every passing moment. He was focused, but I could sense the anxiety lurking just beneath the surface. Cassie was beside me, her expression a mixture of awe and dread as she gazed out the window at the swirling clouds of gas. "It's beautiful," she said, but there was a tremor in her voice that betrayed her true feelings. "Beautiful, but deadly," I murmured, my mind drifting back to the echoes of our encounter in that city, the twisted statues, the whispers that seemed to beckon us closer. I could still hear them, haunting my thoughts like a dark melody. "What if it tries to reach us again?" Cassie's voice wavered, and I turned to see her face pale with fear. "What if it's still watching?" I swallowed hard, the knot in my stomach tightening. "We won't let it. We're stronger than it is." But even as I said it, I felt the doubt creeping in. The city had a grip on us, and I couldn't shake the feeling that it was far from finished. "Prepare for landing," Lee announced, his voice steady. I felt a rush of adrenaline surge through me, a mix of anticipation and dread. The shuttle began to descend, and I clutched the armrests, bracing for the jolt. As we approached the surface, the rocky terrain of Titan came into view, stark against the swirling clouds. My breath caught in my throat as memories flooded back images of the pedestal, the energy that pulsed from it, the way it had drawn us in, promising secrets while threatening our very souls. The shuttle jolted slightly as we touched down, and I released a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. "We're here," Lee said, powering down the engines. The quiet that followed was almost deafening, a stark contrast to the chaos we had left behind. "Let's get ready," I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. We unstrapped ourselves and began to gather our equipment, but the silence pressed down on us, thick and suffocating. Cassie moved slowly, her eyes scanning the interior of the shuttle as if she expected something to jump out at her. "What if they don't believe us?" she asked suddenly, her voice breaking the heavy quiet. "What if they dismiss everything we found?" I felt a chill at her words. It was a fear I had tried to suppress, but it lingered like a shadow. "We'll make them listen," I insisted, though my heart raced at the thought of facing NASA's cold, bureaucratic machinery. They wouldn't understand what we'd witnessed, how deeply we had been affected. "Are we ready?" Lee asked, his voice cutting through my thoughts. I nodded, but I could still feel the weight of our experience pressing down on me. I had written everything down, but how could I convey the true horror of what we faced? Cassie stood at the hatch, peering out into the alien landscape. "It looks so. Empty," she said, her voice barely a whisper, "like nothing is alive." "That's what scares me," I replied, stepping beside her. "What if the city is still out there, waiting?" Dr. Oliver joined us, adjusting his glasses nervously. "We need to document everything before we report back. We can't let our findings be swept under the rug." I nodded, knowing the truth of his words. "We have to make them see. We can't let them silence us." As the hatch opened, a rush of cold air swept in, carrying with it the strange sense of Titan's atmosphere. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what lay ahead. We were about to step into the unknown, and I had no idea what awaited us. The ground crunched beneath my feet as I stepped onto Titan's surface, the low gravity making each movement feel surreal. I glanced around, taking in the barren landscape that stretched before us. The shadows of our experience loomed large in my mind, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching us, waiting for its moment to strike. "Stay close," Lee instructed, his tone serious. We began to move toward the designated rendezvous point, the oppressive silence thickening around us. Each step felt heavy, as if the ground itself was trying to pull us back. I could feel the fear radiating from Cassie and Dr. Oliver, and it only intensified my own sense of unease. "Do you hear that?" Cassie asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I paused, straining to listen, but all I could hear was the sound of our footsteps and the faint wind whipping across the rocky terrain. "What are you talking about?" I asked, a chill creeping up my spine. "It's like whispers," she said, glancing nervously over her shoulder, "as if something is trying to reach us." I felt my heart race at her words. "You're imagining things," I said, but the doubt in my voice betrayed me. The memories of the city clung to my mind like a fog, suffocating and oppressive. "We need to keep moving," Lee urged, and we pressed on, the shadows of our encounter still lurking in the corners of my mind. I knew that whatever lay ahead, we would have to face it together. The city may have receded for now, but I was certain it had not forgotten us. As we approached the designated landing site, the shuttle's engines hummed steadily, but the air inside felt charged with a strange tension. I could see Cassie fiddling with her equipment, her movements precise yet hurried, as if she were trying to distract herself from the memories of what we had just left behind. Lee was quiet, his focus fixed on the control panel, but I could sense the storm of thoughts swirling in his mind. The fear that had gripped us in the chamber was still fresh, still raw, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching us. "Prepare for landing," Lee announced, his voice cutting through the thick silence. My heart raced as I glanced out the window, taking in the barren landscape of Titan, the endless expanse of orange and yellow hues stretching before us. It looked so peaceful from a distance, but I knew better. I felt a knot tighten in my stomach as memories of the city flickered through my mind. The twisted architecture, the statues with their hollow eyes, and the whispers that had haunted us. As we touched down, the shuttle jolted slightly, and I braced myself against the seat, a sense of dread settling over me like a heavy blanket. Lee powered down the engines, and the quiet that followed was almost deafening. I looked at Cassie, who was staring blankly at her instruments, her expression distant. "You okay?" I asked, trying to sound more reassuring than I felt. She blinked, breaking out of her trance, and nodded slowly. "Yeah, just processing everything." I could relate. We had faced something that defied explanation, and the weight of it was suffocating. "We need to document everything before we report back," I said, the urgency in my voice rising. "We can't let them dismiss what we've seen." Cassie nodded again, though I could see the uncertainty in her eyes. "What if they don't believe us? What if they try to cover it up?" I felt a chill run down my spine at the thought. NASA had always been more focused on data and protocol than on the reality of human experience. "We have to make them listen," I insisted, but even as I said it, doubt gnawed at me. The city we had discovered was unlike anything anyone had ever encountered. The memories were still vivid, the whispers still echoing in my mind. "Let's gather our notes and prepare to disembark," Lee said, interrupting my thoughts. He seemed to have regained some composure, but I could see the tension in his jaw. We unstrapped ourselves and moved to gather our equipment, the silence around us feeling heavier with every passing moment. As I rummaged through my pack, I found my notebook, pages filled with frantic scribbles and drawings that captured the surreal essence of what we had experienced. "Look at this," I said, holding up a page depicting the pedestal we had encountered. "It's like it was alive, pulsing with energy. I still can't shake the feeling that it was watching us." Cassie leaned in, her brows furrowing as she examined my sketches. "What do you think it meant? Why did it draw us in?" I shook my head, the uncertainty weighing heavily on me. "I wish I knew. It felt like a trap, like it was feeding on our fear. We need to understand its purpose if we want to prevent it from happening again." Just then, Dr. Oliver joined us, clutching his own notebook filled with meticulous notes. "I managed to document some of the symbols we saw inside," he said, excitement edging into his voice. "If we can decode them, maybe we can figure out what this city was trying to communicate." I felt a surge of hope at his words, but it was quickly overshadowed by the dread lurking in the back of my mind. "We need to hurry," I said, glancing at the shuttle's window. "We don't know how long we'll have before it finds a way to reach us again." "Let's move," Lee urged, and I could see the urgency in his eyes. We gathered our things, ensuring we had everything we needed, and prepared to step out into the alien landscape. As the hatch opened, a blast of cold air rushed in, carrying with it the strange sense of Titan's atmosphere. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what lay ahead. Stepping outside, I felt the weight of the sky above me, a dark blanket that seemed to press down, suffocating in its stillness. The surface was barren, rocky terrain that stretched out before us, stark against the backdrop of swirling clouds. "Stay close," Lee instructed as we stepped onto the surface, the low gravity making each step feel almost surreal. I could feel the tension building again, a prickling sensation at the nape of my neck that told me something was off. We began to walk toward the designated rendezvous point, the shadows of the city still lingering in my thoughts. With each step, I felt an unsettling pull, a whispering echo that made my heart race. "Do you feel that?" I asked, glancing over at Cassie, who looked equally uneasy. "Yeah," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. It's like the air is thick with something. Dr. Oliver nodded, adjusting his glasses. It's residual energy from the city, I think. We need to be cautious. As we moved closer to the rendezvous, the shadows from our experience loomed large in my mind, and the whispers returned, a haunting chorus that tugged at the edges of my consciousness. I shook my head, trying to clear my thoughts. We couldn't afford to get lost in fear again. When we finally reached the landing zone, I felt a wave of relief wash over me. The familiar sight of the waiting team members from NASA made the reality of our situation sink in. They were waiting for answers, but how could we explain what we had experienced without sounding insane? I took a deep breath, my mind racing with the images of the pedestal, the shadows, and the echoes of our own fears. This isn't over, I muttered under my breath, the weight of the truth hanging heavy in the air. Whatever we had encountered beneath Titan's surface, it was far from finished with us. As we ventured deeper into the heart of the city, a heavy silence fell over us, punctuated only by the faint echoes of our footsteps against the cold stone. The air felt thick, almost oppressive, wrapping around us like a shroud. My senses were on high alert, every instinct screaming that we were being watched. The shadows stretched and flickered at the corners of my vision, twisting in ways that made my skin crawl. I glanced at Cassie, who walked beside me, her eyes darting around as if expecting something to leap out from the darkness. "This place is unsettling," she whispered, her voice barely audible. I nodded, unable to find my voice. The twisted architecture loomed overhead, each structure more grotesque than the last, resembling a nightmare that had taken form. "We have to stay focused," I said, forcing myself to sound more confident than I felt. "We need to find the pedestal." Lee walked ahead, his brow furrowed in concentration, but I could see the tension in his posture. "What if it's a trap?" he asked, glancing back at us. "What if we're being lured into something we can't escape?" "Then we'll fight back," I replied, the words spilling out before I could think. But the truth was, doubt gnawed at me. The whispers had returned, a haunting echo that seemed to follow us through the twisted corridors. They were faint, almost like a distant melody, but I could feel their pull, urging me closer to whatever lay ahead. "Let's keep moving," Cassie urged, her voice steady. "The longer we linger, the more we expose ourselves." We pressed on, navigating the winding paths that led deeper into the city. The shadows danced around us, a dark ballet that twisted and writhed in the periphery. With each step, I felt the energy in the air change, a heaviness settling like a storm about to break. "Can you feel that?" I asked, glancing at Dr. Oliver, who had fallen slightly behind us. "Feel what?" he replied, his eyes narrowing as he scanned our surroundings. "It's like something is building." "The air is different," I said, trying to articulate the sensation that gripped me. He hesitated, then nodded slowly. "I feel it too. It's almost as if the city is alive, reacting to our presence." The thought sent a shiver down my spine, but I pressed forward, determined to unravel the mystery of this place. "We can't let fear paralyze us," I said, though my heart raced with uncertainty. "We need to understand what we're dealing with." Finally, we arrived at a larger chamber, its walls adorned with strange symbols that glowed softly in the dim light. My breath caught in my throat as I took in the sight. The pedestal stood at the center, dark and imposing, surrounded by grotesque figures carved from stone. "This must be it," I breathed, stepping closer. The pedestal pulsed with a faint energy, and I felt the hair on my arms stand on end as I approached. "It's beautiful," Cassie whispered, all lacing her words. "And dangerous," Lee replied, his voice low and serious. "We need to be cautious." As we gathered around the pedestal, the atmosphere shifted, thickening with anticipation. I could feel the energy radiating from it, drawing me in like a magnet. The symbols on the walls began to flicker, their light intensifying as if reacting to our presence. "What do you think it means?" I asked, tracing my fingers over the pedestal's surface. Dr. Oliver leaned in closer, his face illuminated by the soft glow. "These markings, they could be a language, a means of communication," he mused, his eyes wide with excitement. "If we can decipher them, we might understand the purpose of this place." "What if they're a warning?" Cassie interjected, her voice filled with concern. "What if it's trying to tell us to leave?" I felt a chill run down my spine at the thought, but I couldn't back down now. "We need to uncover the truth," I insisted, trying to push back the fear creeping in. "If we can figure out what this pedestal represents, we might find a way to protect ourselves." As we examined the symbols, the whispers grew louder, swirling around us like a tempest. I squeezed my eyes shut, trying to block them out, but they seeped into my thoughts, wrapping around my mind like a vine. We can't let it control us, I said, my voice shaking. We need to harness the energy. Cassie looked at me, her expression torn between fear and determination. How do we do that? She asked, her voice trembling. We focus, Lee said, stepping closer to the pedestal. We channel the energy into something we can use, together. The shadows shifted, growing restless as if responding to our intentions. I took a deep breath, pushing back the rising panic. All right, I said, steeling myself. On my count, we direct our energy into the pedestal. We focus on the light. Let's do it, Cassie replied, her voice steadying. We joined hands around the pedestal, feeling the energy pulse between us, a current of warmth and strength. I closed my eyes, letting the whispers wash over me, guiding my thoughts. 1, 2, 3. We pressed our hands against the pedestal, and the energy surged, a brilliant light erupting from its core. The shadows recoiled, their dark tendrils writhing in response to our combined will. Keep pushing, Lee shouted, his voice filled with urgency. I felt the warmth of the light engulf us, illuminating the chamber as we directed our intentions into the pedestal. The energy intensified, pushing back against the darkness that threatened to consume us. It's working, Cassie exclaimed, her eyes shining with hope. But just as we felt the tide shifting, the ground trembled violently, and the shadows surged forward, lashing out like a storm. No, I screamed, the fear clawing at my throat. We can't let it take us. Hold on, Lee shouted, but I could feel the shadows closing in, threatening to drag us back into the abyss. In that moment, I realized we had to confront the darkness directly. Together, I cried out, feeling the strength of our unity rising within us. We can push it back. With a final surge of energy, we focused on the pedestal, directing the light to break through the darkness. The shadows writhed and screamed, but we held firm, pushing back against the chaos that threatened to consume us. The light pulsed brighter, filling the chamber with warmth and hope. I could feel the energy resonating within me, pushing against the encroaching darkness, and I knew we had the strength to overcome it. Now, I urged, feeling the tide shift in our favor. Push back. The shadows screamed, their anguished cries echoing in the chamber as the light exploded outward, consuming the darkness and illuminating every corner. I felt a wave of triumph wash over me as the shadows dissipated, retreating into nothingness. As the light faded, we stood together, panting and breathless, the oppressive weight lifted. We had faced the darkness and emerged victorious, but I knew deep down that this was just the beginning. Whatever the city had planned, we were ready to confront it together. The shadows danced ominously around us as we moved deeper into the heart of the ancient city. Each step felt like an intrusion, a violation of the eerie stillness that enveloped the place. The air was thick with a heavy, oppressive silence, broken only by the occasional sound of our footsteps echoing against the cold stone. I glanced at Cassie, who walked close beside me, her eyes wide and alert, scanning our surroundings with a mix of curiosity and fear. "Do you feel that?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. "It's like the air is charged with something dark." I nodded, my throat dry as I took in the twisted architecture around us. The buildings loomed overhead, their dark silhouettes stretching like fingers toward the sky. Each structure was a grotesque amalgamation of shapes, merging and twisting in ways that defied logic. "It feels alive," I said, my voice low and tense, "like it's watching us." Dr. Oliver was a few steps ahead, his gaze fixed on the ground, his brow furrowed in concentration. He was muttering to himself, his scientific mind grappling with the impossibility of what we were experiencing. "This doesn't make sense," he murmured, more to himself than to us. "The materials, the design, it's not consistent with anything we've seen before." I could sense his struggle to rationalize the irrational, and it sent a shiver down my spine. The whispers from the shadows seemed to grow louder, wrapping around my thoughts like tendrils of smoke. They were a haunting melody, filling my mind with images of fear and despair. I shook my head, trying to clear the fog that threatened to consume me. "Focus, we need to find the pedestal," I urged, willing my heart to calm down. As we pressed on, I felt an unsettling presence, a weight in the air that made my skin crawl. The shadows shifted at the corners of my vision, and I fought the urge to look back. "What if it's trying to pull us in?" Cassie asked, her voice trembling slightly. "What if we're not supposed to be here?" I took a deep breath, forcing myself to stay calm. "We have to keep moving. We can't let fear control us," I said, though my own anxiety clawed at my insides. The city was a labyrinth, each turn revealing more of its dark secrets, and I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being led deeper into a trap. Finally, we reached a large chamber, the ceiling high above us disappearing into darkness. The walls were lined with strange symbols, etched into the stone, pulsing with a dim light that illuminated the room in an otherworldly glow. This must be it, I breathed, my heart racing as I stepped further inside. The pedestal was at the center of the chamber, dark and imposing, surrounded by a circle of twisted figures carved from stone, their expressions frozen in agony. "This is what we came for," Dr. Oliver said, awe creeping into his voice. He approached the pedestal cautiously, examining the intricate designs that adorned its surface. I followed, my heart pounding as I took in the pulsing energy radiating from the stone. It was unlike anything I had ever felt, intense, magnetic, and strangely inviting. "Careful," I warned, my instincts screaming at me. "We don't know what it's capable of." Lee joined us, his eyes narrowing as he studied the pedestal. "There's something here," he said, his voice low and serious. "Something powerful." As we gathered around, the energy in the room shifted, the air thickening with tension. I could feel the whispers rising again, echoing in my mind like a chant. They were calling to me, urging me to reach out, to touch the pedestal and uncover its secrets. "It feels like it's alive," I said, my voice trembling. "Alive and dangerous," Lee replied, stepping back slightly. "We need to be cautious." I looked at Cassie, whose eyes were wide with fear and fascination. "What if it can read our thoughts?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "What if it knows our fears?" The idea sent a chill through me, but I couldn't let fear take hold. I took a step forward, feeling the energy pulsing from the pedestal. "We have to find out what it wants," I said, my voice firm. "This could be our only chance to understand what we're dealing with." Cassie hesitated, biting her lip. "Are you sure? What if it tries to take us? What if we're not strong enough?" "Then we fight back," I said, trying to instill confidence in her. "We're stronger together." As I reached out to touch the pedestal, the energy surged, and I felt a jolt of electricity race through my fingertips. The whispers intensified, becoming a cacophony of voices that filled my mind, drowning out my thoughts. Images flashed before me, visions of fear, of darkness consuming everything in its path. I staggered back, gasping for breath, the onslaught overwhelming. "Emily," Cassie cried, rushing to my side. "What happened?" It's showing me something," I gasped, trying to shake off the sensations flooding my mind. I saw darkness, chaos. It was like the city wanted me to feel it. Dr. Oliver stepped forward, his expression a mix of concern and intrigue. "You experienced a psychic connection," he said, his voice steady. "It's trying to communicate." "It felt like a warning," I said, struggling to regain my composure. "We need to be careful. This place isn't just a ruin, it's alive." "Then we need to understand its language," Lee replied, his determination flaring again. "If we can decode the symbols, we might find a way to control the energy." "But how do we do that?" Cassie asked, her voice trembling slightly. "We start by examining the pedestal," Dr. Oliver suggested. "We have to understand its structure and the symbols surrounding it. There must be a key to unlocking its secrets." As we gathered around the pedestal, I felt the whispers begin to fade, retreating like shadows in the light. The energy still pulsed beneath my fingertips, a living thing that beckoned to us. We had come so far, faced so much, and I refused to let fear control us now. "Together," I said, taking a deep breath, "we can figure this out. We'll find a way to turn this darkness into something we can understand." With a shared sense of determination, we began to examine the pedestal, and I could feel a fragile hope beginning to take root in my chest. The shadows may have loomed large, but we were ready to confront whatever lay ahead. We would face this darkness together, armed with knowledge and strength. The energy around the pedestal thrummed with intensity, a palpable force that filled the air with a low hum. I could feel it vibrating through my fingertips as I traced the intricate symbols etched into the surface. Each marking seemed to pulse with its own life, a rhythm that echoed the pounding of my heart. "What do you think these mean?" I asked, glancing up at Dr. Oliver, who was furrowing his brow in concentration. "I'm not sure," he admitted, his fingers brushing over the carvings. "But they seem to tell a story, a warning perhaps. We need to decode them." Lee stood nearby, his eyes scanning the room, watching for any movement in the shadows that loomed just beyond the edges of our light. "We have to be quick about this," he said, the tension in his voice palpable. "We don't know how much longer we have before it reacts." Cassie knelt next to me, her gaze fixed on the symbols, her brow furrowed in concentration. "Maybe we should take notes," she suggested, pulling out her notepad. "If we can document this, it might help us understand its purpose." I nodded, grateful for her practical approach. "Good idea. Let's focus on the most prominent symbols first." I began jotting down what I could see, trying to remember every detail as the shadows shifted behind us, watching, waiting. The whispers returned, faint at first, but they grew louder, weaving through the air like a sinister melody. I shivered, shaking my head to clear the noise from my mind. "Do you hear that?" I asked, my voice low and shaky. "Hear what?" Lee turned, his expression skeptical. "The whispers," I said, looking between them. "It's like the city is trying to communicate." Cassie's eyes widened, and she glanced around, as if expecting something to leap out at us. "We can't let it distract us," she urged, her voice tight. "We need to focus on the symbols." I took a deep breath, forcing myself to concentrate. "Right. Let's get back to work," I said, forcing the unease aside. I pointed to a symbol that resembled a spiral, intricately woven into the stone. "This one looks significant. What do you think it represents?" Dr. Oliver leaned in closer, his face illuminated by the soft glow of the pedestal. "Spirals often symbolize cycles, the passage of time," he mused. "It could mean something about the nature of this place. Perhaps it's warning us about repeating a cycle." The thought sent a chill down my spine. "What if it's warning us that we could fall victim to it again?" I said, my heart racing. "We can't let that happen," Lee said firmly, stepping closer to the pedestal. "We need to find a way to break that cycle." The whispers intensified, swirling around us like a tempest, and I felt the shadows grow restless. "We have to hurry," I urged, my voice rising in urgency. "Whatever power this pedestal holds, it's not going to let us go easily." As we continued to study the symbols, I felt a surge of determination rising within me. "We can't give in to fear," I said, my voice steady. "We need to harness whatever energy this place has and turn it against the darkness." Dr. Oliver nodded, his expression resolute. "Agreed. If we can unlock the secrets of this pedestal, we might be able to use its power to protect ourselves." Suddenly, the room shook, a tremor that sent ripples through the air. I stumbled back, my heart racing as the shadows surged forward, the whispers crescendoing into a deafening roar. "What's happening?" Cassie cried out, her eyes wide with terror. "Stay together," Lee shouted, his voice cutting through the chaos. "We need to focus on the pedestal." I rushed back to the pedestal, my heart pounding in my chest as I placed my hands on its surface. The energy surged beneath my fingertips, and I felt a connection forming a link to the very essence of the city itself. The whispers quieted, replaced by a deep, resonant hum that pulsed in time with my heartbeat. "Emily, can you feel it?" Dr. Oliver shouted over the noise, his voice strained. "Yes," I replied, forcing my focus to remain on the pedestal. "It's like it's responding to us. We need to channel that energy." Cassie and Lee stepped closer, their hands hovering over the symbols. "How do we do that?" Cassie asked, her voice filled with urgency. "Just like before," I said, trying to steady my breathing. "We focus on the light and push against the darkness, together." We joined hands around the pedestal, feeling the energy pulse between us. I closed my eyes, letting the hum wash over me, guiding my thoughts. "On 3, I said, forcing myself to sound confident. 1, 2, 3. We pressed our hands against the pedestal, and the energy erupted, a blinding light that filled the chamber. The shadows recoiled, the whispers turning into anguished cries as the light pushed back against the darkness. I felt the power coursing through us, surging with intensity, and I knew we were onto something. "Keep going," Lee shouted, his voice filled with determination. "Don't let up." I concentrated harder, willing the energy to break through the barriers of the city, to expose the truth hidden in its shadows. The light pulsed brighter, illuminating every corner of the chamber, pushing against the overwhelming presence of darkness. "It's working," Cassie exclaimed, her voice a mix of hope and fear. "We're making it retreat." But just as we felt the tide shifting, the ground trembled violently, and the shadows lunged forward, swirling around us like a storm. "No," I screamed, the fear clawing at my throat. "We have to hold on." The whispers crescendoed into a maddening roar, a cacophony that threatened to drown us. I gritted my teeth, focusing on the pedestal, on the energy, on the way it felt alive beneath my hands. "We can't give in," I shouted, pushing back against the tide. "Together," Lee cried, and I felt the strength of our combined will surging through us. The shadows writhed and shrieked, but we held firm, directing the energy outward, using it as a weapon against the darkness that threatened to consume us. The light surged again, brighter than before, pushing the shadows back, forcing them to retreat. I felt the weight of fear lifting, replaced by a fierce determination. We would not be defeated. With one final push, the light erupted, engulfing the shadows and illuminating the entire chamber in a blinding brilliance. I could feel the darkness shattering, dissolving into nothingness, and the whispers faded away, leaving only the echo of our triumph. As the light receded, we stood together, panting and breathless, the oppressive atmosphere lifting. We had faced the darkness and emerged victorious, but I knew deep down that this was just the beginning. Whatever the city had planned, we were ready to confront it together. The silence that followed our confrontation with the pedestal was almost deafening. I stood in the aftermath, breathing heavily as the last echoes of light faded into the shadows. The chamber felt different now, the oppressive weight of the darkness having lifted slightly, but the memory of its presence still lingered. I could sense a lingering energy in the air, a tension that hinted at something waiting just beneath the surface. "Did we really do it?" Cassie whispered, her voice breaking the stillness as she glanced around, her eyes wide with disbelief. "I think we did," I replied, though uncertainty gnawed at my insides. The shadows had retreated, but I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't the end. Lee stood at the pedestal, his brow furrowed as he examined the now dim symbols, the faint glow still pulsing gently in the aftermath of our encounter. "Something still feels off," he said, running a hand through his hair, frustration etched across his features. "We might have pushed it back, but I can't shake the feeling that it's not over." Dr. Oliver, still catching his breath, nodded in agreement. "We need to analyze the symbols we uncovered. There's too much we don't understand." I stepped closer to the pedestal, my heart racing as I scanned the symbols etched into the stone. "What if they're a warning?" I suggested, my voice low. "What if this was just the beginning?" A chill ran down my spine at the thought, but I forced myself to focus. "We need to document everything we found. If there's more to this, we can't let it slip away." Cassie moved to join me, her expression a mixture of determination and fear. "Let's start taking notes then," she said, pulling out her notepad. I could see her hands trembling slightly as she flipped through the pages, but her resolve was strong. As we began recording our observations, I could feel the air growing colder, the shadows shifting at the edges of the chamber. The whispers returned, soft and insistent, weaving through my thoughts like an unsettling breeze. I shook my head, trying to dispel the creeping sense of dread. "Do you hear that?" I asked, glancing at Cassie. She nodded, her eyes wide. "It's like the city is trying to speak to us again," she replied, her voice barely a whisper. "We can't let it distract us," Lee said firmly. "Focus on the symbols. We need to figure out what they mean." I nodded, forcing my attention back to the pedestal. "Right. Let's look at this one," I said, pointing to a symbol that resembled a spiral intertwined with jagged lines. "This one feels significant." Dr. Oliver leaned closer, his brow furrowing in concentration. "Spirals often represent cycles or journeys. This could be indicating a path we need to take or a warning of what's to come." The thought sent a shiver down my spine. "A warning of repeating our mistakes?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Exactly," he said, his tone serious. "We have to be cautious. Whatever energy is left here, we don't know how it could affect us." I felt the shadows flickering, swirling just out of reach, as if the city itself was trying to reassert its presence. "We can't let it manipulate us again," I said, determination rising within me. "We need to stay united." The air grew thicker, the whispers intensifying, a chorus of voices that seemed to claw at the edges of my consciousness. I squeezed my eyes shut, willing myself to focus. "We need to harness this energy," I said, forcing the words out. "If we can channel it properly, we might be able to turn it against the darkness." "Let's not lose sight of what we're here for," Lee urged, his voice steady but urgent. "We can't let fear take control." As I opened my eyes, I felt a surge of resolve coursing through me. We had already faced so much, and I refused to let the shadows claim us again. "We're stronger together," I reminded them, looking around at my companions. "We've already pushed back once. We can do it again." "All right," Cassie said, her voice firmer now. "Let's gather our notes and figure out how to make this work." We resumed our examination of the pedestal, each of us working in sync, driven by the shared goal of uncovering the truth. I could feel the energy swirling around us, pulsating with a life of its own, and as we focused, it seemed to respond, thrumming in harmony with our intentions. "Look at this one," I said, pointing to a set of angular lines that seemed to radiate from the center of the pedestal. "It almost looks like it's forming a pattern." Dr. Oliver leaned closer, his eyes narrowing. "Those lines could be directional. They might indicate a flow of energy or a path we need to follow." "What if it's leading us somewhere?" Cassie speculated, her eyes bright with excitement. "What if there's more to this city that we haven't uncovered?" The thought sparked something within me, a flicker of hope mixed with fear. "We need to be cautious," I said, the weight of my words heavy in the air. "We can't rush in blindly again." As we continued to study the pedestal, the whispers grew louder, rising to a fever pitch, but I forced myself to concentrate. "We can't let this control us," I repeated, grounding myself in the moment. "We need to harness this energy to find a way out." I reached out, placing my hand on the pedestal, feeling the pulse of energy beneath my fingertips. It was electric, alive, and for a moment, I felt a connection, a link to the very essence of the city. The whispers quieted, replaced by a deep, resonant hum that filled the chamber. "We need to channel this energy," I urged, my heart racing as I felt the power coursing through me. "If we can focus it, we can push back against whatever darkness still lingers here." "Let's do it," Lee said, stepping closer, determination etched across his face. "We'll work together like before. We can do this." With a shared sense of purpose, we positioned ourselves around the pedestal, ready to harness the energy that pulsed beneath the surface. The shadows lurked in the corners, but I could feel our collective strength rising, a force that would not be easily extinguished. "On my count," I said, my heart racing with adrenaline. 1, 2, 3. We pressed our hands against the pedestal, and the energy erupted, a surge of light that illuminated the chamber. The whispers turned to anguished cries as the shadows recoiled, but we held firm, channeling our will into the light. "Don't let go," Cassie shouted, her voice filled with urgency. "We have to push it back." The shadows writhed and screamed, but the energy surged, pushing against the darkness that threatened to consume us. I could feel the warmth of the light enveloping us, filling me with hope and determination. "Together," I cried, focusing all my strength on the pedestal, willing the energy to break through the darkness and reveal the truth hidden within. The whispers faded, replaced by a sense of clarity, and I knew we were on the brink of uncovering something profound. With a final surge of energy, we pushed back against the darkness, and I felt a wave of triumph wash over me. We had faced the shadows together, and we would emerge stronger for it. The aftermath of our confrontation with the pedestal left a surreal silence hanging in the air, a quiet that felt both heavy and fragile. I stood in the chamber, my heart racing, my mind swirling with echoes of what had just happened. The shadows had retreated, but the tension was still palpable, thick like a storm cloud waiting to burst. Cassie leaned against the pedestal, her breathing uneven, and I could see the lingering fear etched on her face. "Did we really push it back?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I think so," I replied, though uncertainty gnawed at my insides. "But I don't think it's gone for good. We need to figure out what to do next." Lee was examining the now dim symbols on the walls, his brow furrowed in concentration. "This isn't over. Whatever that energy was, it's still here, lurking," he said, his tone grave. I felt a chill run down my spine at his words. The whispers had quieted, but they lingered at the edges of my thoughts, a haunting reminder of the darkness we had faced. "We need to gather as much information as we can," I said, trying to rally my own resolve. "If we can understand what we're dealing with, maybe we can find a way to protect ourselves." Dr. Oliver joined us, a mix of awe and fear in his eyes. "This place holds secrets," he said, gesturing to the symbols that flickered faintly in the dim light. "If we can decode them, we might uncover the truth about this city." Cassie moved closer to the pedestal, her gaze locked onto the markings. "What if the symbols are part of a warning, a message meant to keep us away?" The thought sent a shiver down my spine. "What if they're also a key?" I countered, forcing myself to think positively. "What if understanding them can help us access the energy we felt?" "Let's document everything," Lee suggested, pulling out his notebook. "We'll need to record our observations before we lose the details. This is critical." We split up, gathering around the pedestal, each of us scribbling notes and sketching symbols. I concentrated on a series of interconnected lines that formed a spiral pattern. "These could indicate a cycle, a recurring event," I said, sharing my thoughts with the group. "It might be telling us something about the city's history." Or about us, Cassie added, her voice tight with anxiety. What if it's a warning about repeating our mistakes? I felt the weight of her words settle over me. We had already encountered the darkness once. I couldn't shake the feeling that we were treading on dangerous ground. Then we need to break that cycle, I said firmly. We have to uncover the truth. As we worked, the air grew colder, and I could feel the shadows shifting restlessly, almost as if they were trying to reclaim their hold on the chamber. I caught glimpses of movement at the edges of my vision, but when I turned, there was nothing there, only the dim light illuminating our work. It feels like something is watching us, I admitted, glancing nervously at the others. Lee looked up, his expression serious. Whatever energy remains here is likely tied to the city. We need to stay vigilant. The atmosphere in the chamber thickened, the whispers rising again, a chorus of voices that felt like an echo of our fears. I squeezed my eyes shut, pushing back against the overwhelming sense of dread that threatened to consume me. We can't let it control us, I said, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. We need to harness this energy and turn it against the darkness. Agreed, Dr. Oliver said, his determination shining through. But we have to be careful. We don't fully understand the implications of what we're dealing with. Let's focus on the task at hand, Lee suggested, his tone firm. We need to decode these symbols. The more we learn, the better prepared we'll be. I nodded, steeling myself as I turned back to the pedestal, determination flooding my veins. All right, let's break this down. If we can identify the patterns, we can unlock the secrets. We leaned in closer, our hands tracing the symbols as we worked together to make sense of them. I felt the energy pulsing beneath our fingertips, a current that connected us to the very essence of the city. The whispers grew louder, but this time I focused on the rhythm of the light, using it as a guide. There's a recurring motif here, Cassie pointed out, her voice rising with excitement. Look at this symbol. It's the same as the one over there. She gestured to another marking, her eyes bright with realization. Dr. Oliver leaned closer, nodding in agreement. This could indicate a relationship between the symbols, a connection we need to explore further. As we continued to piece together the puzzle, I felt a sense of clarity beginning to emerge. The shadows at the edges of the chamber seemed to pull back, retreating as we delved deeper into the symbols. We're making progress, I said, a surge of hope lifting my spirits. But just as I felt we were on the brink of a breakthrough, the chamber shook violently, a tremor that rattled the walls and sent us staggering. What's happening? Cassie cried, her eyes wide with fear. Stay together, Lee shouted, his voice steady amidst the chaos. We need to hold our ground. I gripped the pedestal, feeling the energy pulse beneath my hands, but the whispers surged back, a cacophony of voices that clawed at my mind. No, I screamed, fighting to maintain my focus. We can't let it take us. The shadows twisted and writhed, encroaching upon us like a storm. I could feel the weight of their presence, an oppressive force that threatened to swallow us whole. We have to push back, I urged, my heart racing as the darkness clawed at the edges of my mind. Together, Lee shouted, and I felt the strength of our unity rising within us, a force that could not be extinguished. With one final surge, we directed our energy into the pedestal, willing it to break through the shadows that surrounded us. The light erupted, pushing against the darkness, illuminating the chamber with a fierce brilliance. The whispers turned into anguished cries, the shadows recoiling from the intensity of our collective will. As the light surged, I felt a wave of triumph wash over me. We had faced the darkness and emerged victorious, but I knew deep down that this was just the beginning. The city would not be easily defeated, and whatever secrets it held were still waiting to be uncovered. We would stand together, ready to confront whatever lay ahead. The aftermath of the energy surge left the chamber buzzing with a strange tension, the air crackling with residual power. I stood there, breathless, my heart pounding as the last echoes of light flickered and faded. The shadows that had once felt alive now hung back, wary and diminished, but I could sense their presence lurking just beyond the edges of our light. What just happened? Cassie breathed, her wide eyes reflecting the uncertainty that gripped us all. I think we pushed it back, I replied, though doubt still gnawed at my insides. But the city isn't finished with us. We need to be ready for whatever comes next. Lee stepped away from the pedestal, his expression serious. We should document what we learned from this encounter. There might be clues here that can help us understand how to navigate this place. Dr. Oliver was already jotting down notes, his face lit with a mixture of excitement and apprehension. Those symbols, if we can decode them, They could provide insight into the city's purpose, its energy, and maybe even how to control it. The shadows still lingered at the periphery, and I could feel their unsettling energy pressing against my skin. "We need to be cautious," I warned, my voice steady but laced with urgency. "We can't let our guard down." As we resumed our investigation of the pedestal, I took a deep breath and tried to steady my racing heart. I placed my hand on the cool stone, feeling the residual energy still pulsing beneath the surface. It was a reminder of the power we had encountered, and I knew we needed to harness it, to turn it into something we could use to protect ourselves. "Look at this," Cassie said, pointing to a cluster of symbols on the pedestal. "These markings are different from the others. They look more chaotic." I leaned closer, squinting to make sense of the intricate designs. The lines twisted and curled in on themselves, creating a pattern that felt disorienting. "It's like they're fighting against the other symbols," I mused. "Almost like a warning." Dr. Oliver nodded, his brow furrowing in thought. "These could represent instability, a fracture in the city's energy. We need to be aware of what that means." "Do you think it could be linked to the darkness we felt?" Lee asked, his gaze fixed on the markings. "It's possible," I said, feeling a chill creep up my spine. "If this city is alive, then these chaotic symbols might signify its struggle against whatever darkness resides here." The shadows shifted at the edges of the chamber, and I could feel an uneasy energy building, like a storm on the horizon. "We need to understand the balance between the light and the dark," I said, my voice steadying. "If we can decode the symbols, maybe we can find a way to maintain that balance." Cassie began sketching the chaotic symbols in her notebook, her brow furrowed in concentration. "If we can isolate the meanings, we might be able to figure out how to control the energy to keep the darkness at bay." I felt a flicker of hope at her words, but the weight of uncertainty still hung heavy in the air. The whispers had quieted, but I could feel them stirring, just out of reach, teasing the edges of my mind. "Let's focus on what we can decipher," I urged. "We can't let fear take hold of us again." As we worked, I felt the shadows inch closer, their presence palpable. The pedestal continued to pulse gently beneath my fingertips, a reminder of the power it held. I traced the symbols, hoping for clarity, for a glimpse of understanding in the chaos. "There has to be a pattern here," I said, frustration creeping into my voice. "We just need to break it down." Lee leaned closer, his eyes narrowing in concentration. "What if we start with the more stable symbols and see if they relate to the chaotic ones?" I nodded, feeling the spark of determination reignite within me. "That's a good idea. If we can find a connection, it might lead us to the heart of what this city is trying to tell us." We split our efforts, each of us focusing on different sets of symbols. I could feel the energy in the room shifting, and I hoped that we were close to uncovering something vital. The whispers began to rise again, but this time I fought to push them aside, to concentrate on the task at hand. Suddenly, I felt a sharp pang of realization. "The spiral," I exclaimed, pointing to the symbol we had noticed earlier. "It represents a cycle, and it's connected to the stable symbols. It could indicate that the chaos is part of a larger pattern." Dr. Oliver's eyes lit up. "That makes sense. If we can identify how these symbols interact, we might find a way to control the flow of energy, to stabilize it." As I jotted down notes, the air in the chamber began to hum, a vibration that resonated through my bones. I glanced around, sensing a shift in the shadows. "It's changing again," I said, my heart racing. "Stay alert," Lee commanded, his gaze darting around the chamber. "We need to focus on what we're doing. Don't let it distract us." The whispers grew louder, a cacophony of voices that threatened to drown out my thoughts. "We can't let it control us," I reminded myself, squeezing my eyes shut to block out the sound. "We have to stay focused." I took a deep breath, forcing the chaos to the back of my mind as I concentrated on the symbols. "Let's push through this," I said, my voice steady. "We're on the brink of something important." As we worked, I could feel the energy of the chamber shifting, pulsing in response to our efforts. The chaotic symbols began to glow softly, their light intertwining with the stable symbols, creating a web of energy that pulsed with life. "Look," Cassie exclaimed, her eyes wide with wonder. "It's reacting to us. We're making progress." I felt a surge of hope at her words, but the shadows were still there, lurking just out of sight. I couldn't shake the feeling that they were waiting for us to falter. "We have to keep going," I urged, the determination in my voice rising. With renewed focus, we pushed forward, tracing the connections between the symbols, our collective energy building with each revelation. The whispers began to fade, replaced by a deep, resonant hum that filled the chamber, a sound that felt like an affirmation of our strength. "This is it," I said, feeling the energy surge through me. "We're on the verge of uncovering the truth." As the light from the symbols intensified, I could feel the shadows retreating, the energy pushing them back. We had faced the darkness and emerged stronger, but I knew that this was just the beginning. Whatever lay ahead, we would confront it together. The energy in the chamber pulsed with a life of its own as we gathered around the pedestal, our discoveries hanging heavy in the air. The glowing symbols seemed to thrum with potential, illuminating the dark corners of the space as I felt a strange mix of hope and trepidation. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was to come. "We've figured out some of the patterns," I said, glancing at Cassie, who was scribbling notes furiously. "But we still don't know how to access the energy." Cassie looked up, her brow furrowed in concentration. "We need to find a way to channel it. If we can tap into that energy, we might be able to control it." "Agreed," Lee said, his tone serious. "But how? We need to understand how these symbols relate to each other." Dr. Oliver stepped closer to the pedestal, examining the glowing markings. "It's about balance," he said thoughtfully. "The stable symbols seem to act as a counter to the chaotic ones. We need to find a way to connect the two." I felt a flicker of realization at his words. What if we create a focal point? If we can establish a link between the stable and chaotic symbols, we might be able to harness the energy. "Great idea," Cassie replied, her enthusiasm shining through the tension in the air. "Let's position ourselves around the pedestal and focus our energy on that connection." We gathered in a circle, placing our hands on the pedestal, feeling the warmth radiating from its surface. The hum of energy grew louder, a chorus of vibrations that resonated with our intentions. I closed my eyes, letting the energy wash over me, feeling it intertwine with my thoughts. "On my count," I said, my voice steady. 1, 2, 3. As we pressed our hands against the pedestal, a surge of energy shot through me, igniting every nerve ending. The light pulsed in response, vibrant and alive, and I could feel it resonating with our collective strength. "It's working," I exclaimed, my heart racing. But then, just as the shadows at the edges of the chamber began to recede, the ground trembled violently. "What's happening?" Cassie shouted, her voice filled with panic. "It's the darkness fighting back," Lee yelled, struggling to maintain his footing. The shadows surged forward, their presence enveloping us like a suffocating fog. "Stay together," Dr. Oliver commanded, but I could feel the energy wavering, threatening to dissipate. "We need to push through." With every ounce of strength, I focused on the connection we had established, willing the energy to surge forward and break through the darkness. The whispers grew louder, a cacophony of despair that clawed at my mind. "We won't let you take us," I shouted, channeling all my fear into the light. The energy surged again, illuminating the chamber in a brilliant flash. The shadows screamed, their cries echoing around us, but I felt our unity strengthening, a force that would not be extinguished. "Together," I urged, pushing back against the encroaching darkness. The light pulsed, brighter and more intense, and I could feel the shadows writhing, struggling to maintain their grip on us. "It's working," Cassie shouted, her voice filled with hope. "We're driving it back." As we pressed on, I felt the energy flowing through us, a current that connected us all. We were drawing strength from one another, harnessing the power of our combined wills. "Don't let up," Lee urged, his voice steady amidst the chaos. With one final push, we directed the energy into the pedestal, willing it to break through the darkness. The shadows howled, their anguished cries echoing in the chamber, but the light continued to surge forward, illuminating everything in its path. And then, in a blinding flash, the darkness shattered, dispersing into the corners of the room like smoke. I felt a wave of triumph wash over me, a rush of adrenaline and relief. We had faced the shadows and emerged victorious, but I knew this was only a temporary reprieve. The darkness would return, and we needed to be ready. The whispers faded, replaced by an eerie silence that filled the chamber. I opened my eyes, panting as I took in the scene around us. The pedestal still pulsed with energy, but the oppressive weight of the shadows had lifted, if only for a moment. "We did it," I breathed, glancing at my companions. Cassie's face was lit with a mix of disbelief and excitement, while Lee looked contemplative, his brow furrowed as he processed what had just happened. "But we need to understand how we did it," Dr. Oliver said, his voice steady. "We can't just rely on brute force. We need to know how to maintain this energy." I nodded, feeling the remnants of fear lingering in the back of my mind. We need to document everything we've learned so far, I suggested, my heart still racing. Every symbol, every connection, it's all crucial. Cassie quickly pulled out her notebook, flipping through the pages filled with sketches and notes. I think I have enough information to piece together the relationships between the symbols, she said, her enthusiasm infectious. If we can identify the patterns, we might be able to figure out how to control the energy long term. That's the plan, Lee said, his voice filled with determination. Let's gather our notes and see what we can uncover. As we resumed our work, I felt the energy in the chamber shifting again, a gentle pulse that echoed the rhythm of our thoughts. I closed my eyes, concentrating on the pedestal, willing the energy to respond. The whispers returned, but this time they felt different, less chaotic, almost melodic, as if the city was acknowledging our efforts. We're making progress, I said, feeling a surge of hope. We just need to keep pushing forward. As we delved deeper into our research, the atmosphere around us shifted. The energy became more stable, the shadows retreating further into the corners of the chamber. I felt a sense of clarity beginning to emerge, a feeling that we were on the verge of uncovering something profound. Look at this, Cassie said, her voice filled with excitement. If we link these symbols together, we might be able to create a map of the energy flow. I leaned closer, tracing the patterns she had sketched. That could work. If we can visualize how the energy moves, we can figure out how to harness it more effectively. As we worked together, the energy in the chamber pulsed in time with our efforts. Responding to our determination, I felt a renewed sense of purpose rising within me, a conviction that we could uncover the truth behind the city and its darkness. With every symbol we deciphered, I felt the shadows receding, their hold on us weakening. We had faced the darkness together, and I knew we would confront whatever lay ahead as a united force. The city might have its secrets, but we were ready to unveil them, one symbol at a time. The chamber was alive with energy as we gathered around the pedestal, the symbols glowing with an intensity that seemed to pulse in rhythm with our hearts. I could feel the weight of our discoveries pressing down on us, the truth of this place hanging in the air like a storm cloud, ready to burst. This is it, I said, trying to steady my breath. We've figured out the connections. Now we just need to find a way to harness this energy. Cassie flipped through her notes, her brow furrowed in concentration. If we can activate the stable symbols and connect them with the chaotic ones, we might create a balanced flow of energy, she suggested, her excitement bubbling just beneath the surface. Exactly, Lee added, his gaze fixed on the pedestal. We need to push against the darkness, but we have to do it carefully. We can't afford any missteps. Dr. Oliver nodded, his expression serious as he examined the glowing symbols. We have to find the right sequence. If we can unlock the energy within the pedestal, we may be able to control it. I felt a flicker of hope at his words, but a nagging fear lingered in the back of my mind. The shadows were still there, lurking just beyond the edges of the light, and I couldn't shake the feeling that they were watching, waiting for an opportunity to strike. We need to stay united, I said, my voice steady despite the tension. If we focus on the energy together, we can make it work. As we positioned ourselves around the pedestal, I placed my hand on its cool surface, feeling the pulse of energy beneath my fingertips. The light radiated warmth, almost inviting, and I closed my eyes, allowing myself to sink into the rhythm of the chamber. I could feel the energy swirling around us, waiting for our command. On my count, I said, trying to keep my voice calm. 1, 2, 3. We pressed our hands against the pedestal, and the energy erupted, a brilliant light that filled the chamber. I felt it surge through me, an electrifying current that connected us all. The shadows writhed at the edges of the room, but we held firm, directing our energy toward the pedestal. Keep pushing, Lee shouted, determination ringing in his voice. We can drive it back. The light pulsed, growing brighter and more intense, pushing against the encroaching darkness. I could feel the shadows clawing at the edges of our light, but we were a united front, our strength intertwining as we focused our intentions. We won't let you take us, I screamed, channeling every ounce of fear and determination into the energy flowing through us. The shadows twisted and shrieked, a cacophony of rage that filled the chamber, but we pressed on, refusing to yield. It's working, Cassie exclaimed, her voice filled with a mix of fear and hope. We're pushing it back. With a final surge of power, the light exploded outward, engulfing the shadows in a brilliant flash. I felt the darkness dissolve around us, retreating into the corners of the room. The whispers fell silent, replaced by the echo of our triumph. Panting and breathless, I opened my eyes, the chamber now illuminated by the soft glow of the pedestal. The oppressive weight of the shadows had lifted, leaving us standing together in a pool of light. "We did it," I breathed, glancing at my companions. Cassie's face was alight with disbelief, while Lee looked contemplative, his brow furrowed as he processed what had just happened. "But we need to understand how we did it," Dr. Oliver said, his voice steady. "We can't just rely on brute force. We need to know how to maintain this energy." I nodded, feeling the remnants of fear lingering in the back of my mind. "We need to document everything we've learned so far," I suggested, my heart still racing. "Every symbol, every connection, it's all crucial." Cassie quickly pulled out her notebook, flipping through the pages filled with sketches and notes. "I think I have enough information to piece together the relationships between the symbols," she said, her enthusiasm shining through. "If we can identify the patterns, we might be able to figure out how to control the energy long term." "That's the plan," Lee said, his voice filled with determination. "Let's gather our notes and see what we can uncover." As we resumed our work, I felt the energy in the chamber shifting again, a gentle pulse that echoed the rhythm of our thoughts. I closed my eyes, concentrating on the pedestal, willing the energy to respond. The whispers returned, but this time they felt different, less chaotic, almost melodic, as if the city was acknowledging our efforts. "We're making progress," I said, feeling a surge of hope. "We just need to keep pushing forward." As we delved deeper into our research, the atmosphere around us shifted. The energy became more stable, the shadows retreating further into the corners of the chamber. I felt a sense of clarity beginning to emerge, a feeling that we were on the verge of uncovering something profound. "Look at this," Cassie said, her voice filled with excitement. "If we link these symbols together, we might be able to create a map of the energy flow." I leaned closer, tracing the patterns she had sketched. "That could work. If we can visualize how the energy moves, we can figure out how to harness it more effectively." As we worked together, the energy in the chamber pulsed in time with our efforts, responding to our determination. I felt a renewed sense of purpose rising within me, a conviction that we could uncover the truth behind the city and its darkness. With every symbol we deciphered, I felt the shadows receding, their hold on us weakening. We had faced the darkness together, and I knew we would confront whatever lay ahead as a united force. The city might have its secrets, but we were ready to unveil them, one symbol at a time. The connection we forged with the pedestal deepened, and I could feel the energy beginning to stabilize, transforming the chaotic symbols into a coherent map of power. "We're almost there," I said, my heart racing with excitement. "We can do this," Cassie affirmed, her confidence growing. "We're on the brink of something big." As we continued to work, the shadows fell away, replaced by the soft glow of understanding. I felt a sense of accomplishment flooding through me, a feeling that we had turned the tide. Whatever the city had in store for us, we would face it together, united in our quest for knowledge and strength. "Let's keep this momentum going," Lee urged, determination etched in his features. "We have to be ready for anything." With renewed resolve, we delved deeper into our research, ready to confront whatever lay ahead. The shadows may have receded for now, but the energy of the pedestal surged around us, a reminder of the power we held. We were prepared to unravel the mysteries of this place, to stand against the darkness that had sought to consume us. Together, we would face whatever challenges awaited, ready to uncover the truth hidden within the city's depths. The chamber hummed with a strange energy, the atmosphere charged with anticipation as we gathered around the pedestal. The symbols we had deciphered flickered softly, a dance of light and shadow that seemed to pulse in rhythm with our own hearts. I could feel the weight of our discoveries pressing down on us, the secrets of the city hanging tantalizingly close, yet frustratingly out of reach. "We've done a lot of work, but we need to take it to the next level," I said, my voice steady despite the tension in the air. "If we're going to confront whatever lies ahead, we need to unlock the full potential of this energy." Cassie looked up from her notes, determination shining in her eyes. "We need to find a way to channel the energy from the pedestal into a tangible form. If we can harness it, we might be able to create a barrier against the darkness." "Agreed," Lee said, his brow furrowed as he examined the symbols again. "We have to be meticulous in our approach. We don't know how the city will react." Dr. Oliver stepped closer to the pedestal, his expression a mix of excitement and caution. "Let's focus on the stable symbols we've identified. They seem to resonate with the pedestal's energy. If we can isolate those, we can start channeling the power more effectively." As we gathered around the pedestal, I placed my hand on its surface, feeling the warmth radiate beneath my fingertips. It was alive, pulsing with energy that beckoned us to delve deeper. "All right, let's do this," I said, my heart racing with determination. "On three, we'll direct our energy into the pedestal. 1, 2, 3. We pressed our hands against the stone, and an immediate surge of power coursed through me. The light erupted, brightening the chamber as we focused our thoughts on the stable symbols. I could feel the energy spiraling around us, a whirlwind of warmth and light, pushing against the darkness that lingered just outside our reach. "Keep it steady," Cassie shouted, her voice filled with urgency. "We can't let it overwhelm us." The shadows stirred, their dark tendrils writhing in response to the light, but we held firm, channeling our collective will into the pedestal. "We have to create a barrier," Lee urged, his eyes narrowed in concentration. "Focus on forming a shield around us." I felt the energy pulsing with intensity, and I willed it to expand outward, envisioning a protective barrier enveloping us. "We're stronger together," I shouted, channeling every ounce of strength I had. The shadows howled, their cries echoing in the chamber as we pushed against the darkness. I could feel it clawing at the edges of our light, but we wouldn't let it consume us. "It's working," Cassie exclaimed, her voice a mixture of fear and hope. With every ounce of will, we pressed on, directing the energy toward the barrier we envisioned. The light pulsed brighter, illuminating every corner of the chamber, pushing back against the encroaching darkness. "Don't let up," Dr. Oliver shouted, his voice filled with urgency. We fought against the shadows, our combined strength growing with each passing moment. The energy swirled around us, creating a cocoon of light that pushed the darkness further away. "It's beautiful," I said, awe creeping into my voice. "We're creating something powerful." But just as I felt the tide shifting in our favor, the chamber shook violently. "What's happening?" Cassie screamed, her eyes wide with fear. "The darkness is fighting back," Lee shouted, struggling to maintain his grip on the pedestal. "We need to hold our ground." I felt the shadows surging forward, their dark forms twisting and writhing as they threatened to engulf us. "We can't let it take us," I screamed, desperation clawing at my throat. "Focus," Dr. Oliver urged, his voice steady amidst the chaos. "We can push through this." With every ounce of strength, I concentrated on the barrier, willing it to hold against the onslaught of darkness. The whispers crescendoed into a deafening roar, a cacophony of despair that clawed at my mind. "No," I shouted, channeling all my fear into the light. "We won't be defeated." The energy surged, a blinding light erupting from the pedestal as we pushed back against the shadows. The darkness howled, but we held firm, the light pushing against the chaos. "Together," I cried, feeling the strength of our unity rise within us. With one final surge, we directed our energy into the barrier, willing it to expand and push the darkness away. The shadows screamed, their cries mingling with the roar of our effort, but I felt the light overwhelming them, forcing them to retreat. The darkness dissolved, scattering into nothingness as the light erupted, illuminating the entire chamber. I felt a rush of triumph wash over me, a wave of relief that swept away the fear. We had done it. We had pushed back the darkness and emerged victorious. As the light faded, we stood together, panting and breathless, the oppressive weight of the shadows lifted. "We did it," I breathed, glancing at my companions. Cassie's face was alight with disbelief, while Lee looked contemplative, his brow furrowed as he processed what had just happened. "But we need to understand how we did it," Dr. Oliver said, his voice steady. "We can't just rely on brute force. We need to know how to maintain this energy." I nodded, feeling the remnants of fear lingering in the back of my mind. "We need to document everything we've learned so far," I suggested, my heart still racing. "Every symbol, every connection. It's all crucial." Cassie quickly pulled out her notebook, flipping through the pages filled with sketches and notes. "I think I have enough information to piece together the relationships between the symbols," she said, her enthusiasm shining through. "If we can identify the patterns, we might be able to figure out how to control the energy long term." "That's the plan," Lee said, his voice filled with determination. "Let's gather our notes and see what we can uncover." As we resumed our work, I felt the energy in the chamber shifting again, a gentle pulse that echoed the rhythm of our thoughts. I closed my eyes, concentrating on the pedestal, willing the energy to respond. The whispers returned, but this time they felt different, less chaotic, almost melodic, as if the city was acknowledging our efforts. "We're making progress," I said, feeling a surge of hope. "We just need to keep pushing forward." As we delved deeper into our research, The atmosphere around us shifted. The energy became more stable, the shadows retreating further into the corners of the chamber. I felt a sense of clarity beginning to emerge, a feeling that we were on the verge of uncovering something profound. "Look at this," Cassie said, her voice filled with excitement. "If we link these symbols together, we might be able to create a map of the energy flow." I leaned closer, tracing the patterns she had sketched. That could work. If we can visualize how the energy moves, we can figure out how to harness it more effectively. As we worked together, the energy in the chamber pulsed in time with our efforts, responding to our determination. I felt a renewed sense of purpose rising within me, a conviction that we could uncover the truth behind the city and its darkness. With every symbol we deciphered, I felt the shadows receding, their hold on us weakening. We had faced the darkness together, and I knew we would confront whatever lay ahead as a united force. The city might have its secrets, but we were ready to unveil them, one symbol at a time. The connection we forged with the pedestal deepened, and I could feel the energy beginning to stabilize, transforming the chaotic symbols into a coherent map of power. "We're almost there," I said, my heart racing with excitement. "We can do this," Cassie affirmed, her confidence growing. "We're on the brink of something big." As we continued to work, the shadows fell away, replaced by the soft glow of understanding. I felt a sense of accomplishment flooding through me, a feeling that we had turned the tide. Whatever the city had in store for us, we would face it together, united in our quest for knowledge and strength. "Let's keep this momentum going," Lee urged, determination etched in his features. "We have to be ready for anything." With renewed resolve, we delved deeper into our research, ready to confront whatever lay ahead. The shadows may have receded for now, but the energy of the pedestal surged around us, a reminder of the power we held. We were prepared to unravel the mysteries of this place, to stand against the darkness that had sought to consume us. Together, we would face whatever challenges awaited, ready to uncover the truth hidden within the city's depths. The chamber was still, the air thick with an almost tangible energy as we stood before the pedestal, a silent witness to our journey. We had spent hours deciphering the symbols, linking them to the shadows that had haunted us since we first entered this ancient city. Now, it felt like we were on the brink of something monumental. I could sense the tension building among us, a mixture of fear and anticipation. "We need to finalize our plan," I said, breaking the silence that hung heavily in the air. "If we're going to harness this energy, we need to understand how to stabilize it first." Cassie nodded, her eyes gleaming with determination. "I think I have a theory. If we can create a flow between the stable and chaotic symbols, we might be able to maintain a protective barrier against whatever darkness still lingers." "That's a good idea," Lee said, glancing at the pedestal. "But we have to be careful. The energy here is unpredictable. We don't want to lose control." Dr. Oliver stepped forward, his brow furrowed in concentration. "We have to act as a conduit, channeling our energy through the pedestal while maintaining focus on the symbols. If we lose that focus, we could trigger something we can't contain." I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of our task settle on my shoulders. "Let's review what we've learned. We know that the stable symbols resonate with the pedestal, while the chaotic ones seem to react to disturbances in the energy flow. We need to find a balance between the two." As we gathered around the pedestal, I placed my hand on its cool surface, feeling the familiar pulse of energy beneath my fingertips. The light radiated warmth, a comforting presence that reassured me we were on the right path. "All right, let's do this," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "On my count, we'll channel our energy into the pedestal and direct it toward the chaotic symbols." "Ready," Cassie said, determination etched on her face. "Let's go," Lee added, his voice steady and calm. I closed my eyes, taking a moment to center myself. I could feel the energy swirling around us, waiting for our command. 1, 2, 3. We pressed our hands against the pedestal, and a surge of energy shot through me, electrifying every nerve ending. The light erupted, filling the chamber with a brilliance that pushed back against the shadows, illuminating the intricate symbols on the walls. "Keep it steady," I shouted, feeling the energy thrumming in time with my heartbeat. The shadows writhed, their dark tendrils clawing at the edges of the light, but we held firm, directing our energy toward the chaotic symbols. "Push through," Cassie yelled, her voice rising above the chaos. "We can do this." I concentrated harder, willing the energy to flow seamlessly between the symbols, creating a bridge between the stable and chaotic forces. The shadows surged forward, their presence threatening to engulf us, but I refused to let fear take hold. "We won't let you win," I screamed, pouring my will into the light. The energy intensified, a blinding flash that enveloped us, pushing back against the encroaching darkness. "It's working," Lee shouted, excitement lacing his voice. With every ounce of determination, I directed the energy into the pedestal, envisioning the flow becoming a protective barrier around us. "Together," I urged, feeling the strength of our unity rise within us. The shadows screamed, their cries mingling with the roar of our effort as the light surged outward, illuminating every corner of the chamber. I could feel the darkness receding, pushed back by our collective strength. "Keep going," Cassie urged, her eyes shining with hope. As the light pulsed brighter, I could see the chaotic symbols responding, glowing with a vibrant energy that intertwined with the stable ones. "We're creating a flow," I exclaimed, a rush of exhilaration flooding through me. But just as I felt we were on the brink of success, the ground trembled violently. "What's happening?" Cassie screamed, fear creeping into her voice. "It's fighting back," Lee shouted, struggling to maintain his grip on the pedestal. "We have to hold our ground." I felt the shadows surge forward, their dark forms twisting and writhing as they threatened to engulf us. "No," I screamed, fighting to concentrate on the energy. "We can't let it take us." "Focus," Dr. Oliver urged, his voice steady amidst the chaos. "We can push through this." With every ounce of strength, I concentrated on the barrier we were creating, willing it to expand and push the darkness away. The whispers turned into a cacophony of despair that clawed at my mind, but I pushed back, channeling my fear into the light. "We will not be defeated," I shouted, channeling every ounce of my energy into the pedestal. The light surged, a blinding wave that enveloped us, pushing back against the shadows. The darkness howled, but we held firm, our unity forming an unbreakable shield. "Together," I cried, feeling the strength of our combined will rising within us. With one final push, we directed the energy into the pedestal, willing it to break through the darkness. The shadows writhed and screamed, their anguished cries echoing in the chamber, but the light continued to surge forward, illuminating everything in its path. And then, in a blinding flash, the darkness shattered, dissolving into nothingness. I felt a wave of relief wash over me as the light filled the chamber, pushing the shadows away, leaving only our triumph behind. Panting and breathless, I opened my eyes, surveying the scene around us. The pedestal still pulsed with energy, but the oppressive weight of the shadows had lifted. "We did it," I breathed, glancing at my companions. Cassie's face was alight with disbelief, while Lee looked contemplative, his brow furrowed as he processed what had just happened. "But we need to understand how we did it," Dr. Oliver said, his voice steady. "We can't just rely on brute force. We need to know how to maintain this energy." I nodded, feeling the remnants of fear lingering in the back of my mind. "We need to document everything we've learned so far," I suggested, my heart still racing. "Every symbol, every connection. It's all crucial." Cassie quickly pulled out her notebook, flipping through the pages filled with sketches and notes. "I think I have enough information to piece together the relationships between the symbols," she said, her enthusiasm shining through. "If we can identify the patterns, we might be able to figure out how to control the energy long term." "That's the plan," Lee said, his voice filled with determination. "Let's gather our notes and see what we can uncover." As we resumed our work, I felt the energy in the chamber shifting again, a gentle pulse that echoed the rhythm of our thoughts. I closed my eyes, concentrating on the pedestal, willing the energy to respond. The whispers returned, but this time they felt different, less chaotic, almost melodic, as if the city was acknowledging our efforts. "We're making progress," I said, feeling a surge of hope. "We just need to keep pushing forward." As we delved deeper into our research, the atmosphere around us shifted. The energy became more stable, the shadows retreating further into the corners of the chamber. I felt a sense of clarity beginning to emerge, a feeling that we were on the verge of uncovering something profound. "Look at this," Cassie said, her voice filled with excitement. "If we link these symbols together, we might be able to create a map of the energy flow." I leaned closer, tracing the patterns she had sketched. "That could work. If we can visualize how the energy moves, we can figure out how to harness it more effectively." As we worked together, the energy in the chamber pulsed in time with our efforts, responding to our determination. I felt a renewed sense of purpose rising within me, a conviction that we could uncover the truth behind the city and its darkness. With every symbol we deciphered, I felt the shadows receding, their hold on us weakening. We had faced the darkness together, and I knew we would confront whatever lay ahead as a united force. The city might have its secrets, but we were ready to unveil them, one symbol at a time. The connection we forged with the pedestal deepened, and I could feel the energy beginning to stabilize, transforming the chaotic symbols into a coherent map of power. "We're almost there," I said, my heart racing with excitement. "We can do this," Cassie affirmed, her confidence growing. "We're on the brink of something big." As we continued to work, the shadows fell away, replaced by the soft glow of understanding. I felt a sense of accomplishment flooding through me, a feeling that we had turned the tide. Whatever the city had in store for us, we would face it together, united in our quest for knowledge and strength. "Let's keep this momentum going," Lee urged, determination etched in his features. "We have to be ready for anything." With renewed resolve, we delved deeper into our research, ready to confront whatever lay ahead. The shadows may have receded for now, but the energy of the pedestal surged around us, a reminder of the power we held. We were prepared to unravel the mysteries of this place, to stand against the darkness that had sought to consume us. Together, we would face